it's a fantastic turnout tonight, so thank you all ever so much for coming down to listen to us speak. My name is Duncan. I'm the founder and owner of the Cambridge Organic Food Company, and I'm also leading the project to try and create a sustainable food hub for Cambridge. So I guess I'm the local food guy, and my contribution to this evening's talk is from that perspective. Now, I'm not talking about the food hub tonight. Tonight's talk is about food miles, but I dare say that anybody that's interested enough to come along to a talk about food miles is also going to be really interested to find out what we're trying to do with the food hub project. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave this slide on the screen behind me, and I do urge you perhaps to have a look at our website, try and find out what we're aiming to achieve, and perhaps, you know, if what I say tonight resonates with you, do consider sort of putting your name and email address into becoming one of our supporters. So, the reasons why I think that buying food locally is important are manifold. First off, you're supporting small-scale, grassroots food producers. These are the without these guys, there wouldn't be an alternative and sustainable agricultural movement. So it's really important. The money that you spend stays in the local economy, and I dare say that the food that you buy as well is just that much fresher and unadulterated by processes intended to extend its shelf life. But above all, it's about sustainability, and it's a very straightforward equation. If you move anything from one place to another, that takes energy. And therefore, the greater distance an item of food has travelled, the greater its carbon footprint will be. If only it was as simple as that. When I was given the title for this session, Are Food Miles Worth Worrying About?, what that intimated to me was that while many people consider local and low food miles to be indicators of the environmental merits of a food product, in reality, the issue is far more nuanced than that. So let's for a moment consider something that represents industrial agriculture at its very worst. How's about an intensive broiler chicken farm? So now, we ought to sort of point out that the UK does have sort of reasonably good animal welfare standards compared to sort of many other countries, but even so, the lowest legal limits still represent a pretty abhorrent standard of living for the poor creatures involved. These places are energy intensive, they pollute the local environment with nitrogen-rich manure, and they just guff out loads of carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere. No doubt about it, a chicken from one of these farms represents a pretty poor choice from an environmental perspective. Now, East Anglia has a fairly high concentration of these farms. There will almost certainly be one that's within 20 miles of Cambridge, and a chicken from that farm, technically, is locally produced. So, certainly when you're comparing like-for-like products that have the same production values, then the one that's travelled the least distance will have the lowest carbon footprint. But if you want to truly understand the environmental impact of a particular food item, there are many more factors that need to be taken into consideration, some of which have a much greater bearing, have a much greater environmental impact just than the food miles. Meat and dairy consumption and food waste are two issues that dwarf food miles in terms of environmental sustainability. So, what about one of my boxes over here? So, to give an example, a banana from the Dominican Republic is going to have a smaller carbon footprint than a lamb chop from Suffolk, by a factor of about 30 times, in fact. Okay. So, I was actually a little bit surprised that food miles was the subject matter for this talk. Trends tend to come and go in the environmental movement, and at the moment things like plastic and veganism seem to be the en vogue topics. But the fact of the matter is all of these things. It's food miles, it's intensive livestock production, it's mountainous food waste, it's peak phosphorus, it's declining bee populations, it's Roundup ready soybeans, it's obesity, it's cardiovascular heart disease, and it's the epidemic of children being admitted into hospital to have their rotten teeth removed. These are all symptoms of a food system which is failing at every level. It is failing to adequately nourish the world's population, and it is utterly unsustainable. It is known as the productionist paradigm. It's based on linear thinking, and it sacrifices long-term sustainability, which is good for the people and the planet, for short-term financial gain. It must change, and urgently. And this is what we're trying to do with our Sustainable Food Hub project. Our aim is to prove that it is possible to create a food system which is more equitable, which is less wasteful, and which is genuinely sustainable. And when we talk about that, we mean environmentally, financially, and socially sustainable. And what's more, we're aiming to do this on a scale that really makes a difference. Now, the fundamental characteristic of our food hub is that we're trying to create an ideal, localised food distribution network. We're aiming to put mechanisms in place so that the food that is grown in the fields just outside Cambridge can find its way into restaurants and schools and college canteens. So, if things like meat and dairy consumption are so much more important than food miles from an environmental perspective, why is it that we're placing such a high emphasis on local with our Food Hub project? So, to help me explain this, I'm going to need a volunteer from the audience. Anyone? I'm going to pick. Yeah, perfect. You're in the perfect place. Please, sort of come up here. Yeah. Okay. So, you are my 4-year-old daughter. So she's innocent. She's inquisitive, and she's also a bit shorter than you. So there we go. So. Try to imagine that we've gone for a little field, we've gone for a little walk to the fields just outside our village. Okay. And this is what our conversation is going to go. So, see these plants growing here? These are potatoes. This is what potatoes look like when they're grown in the field. I just sort of did that to the soil. And you can take that home with you and have that for your dinner. Okay. But these potatoes, they aren't for us. When they're harvested, they're going to go into a lorry to York. Okay. Now, can you remember when we went to go visit Auntie Mary in Northampton? Yes? Yeah. Can you remember how long the car journey was? And how irritable we got on the way? Now, when we were there, can you remember we went even further? We went up into Scotland to go and see the pandas. Well, the potatoes we're going to eat come from up there. She'd think I was absolutely crazy. I didn't catch your name.
Lizzie.
Lizzie, thank you very much, Lizzie. Come over around. You don't have to think of it for very long for that to seem like totally crazy. 10 years ago, the UK government signed up to the 2008 Climate Change Act. This was a commitment to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by the year 2050. And we absolutely must reach that target. Otherwise, we are going to suffer from the worst consequences of climate change. Now, 80%, that's an awful lot. And every gram of carbon is going to make a difference. There certainly isn't room within that target for needlessly carting food up and down the country when we could and should be eating the field that's grown right on our doorstep. Do I think that food miles are worth worrying about? Absolutely I do. Thank you.